we have a question regarding spiritual awakening. And the questioner asks, why did I lose the glimpse after spiritual awakening? Because when it happened, I experienced immense joy, a state of complete immersion into the blissfulness. But now it feels that I've lost that glimpse and I'm going back to my former self. Was all of this false? Was it my mind's delusion? What am I doing wrong? And what can I do to make it right? All right, let's understand what is happening here. So, something happened, okay? Now, conceptually, we call it spiritual awakening. We say awakening happened. That means a glimpse into the wholeness happened. And there was a crack in the structure of the personality or the separate self or ego, as we call it. Now, in that instant, it felt blissful because there was no one connected to the story of me. There was no me in that instant. And the absence of me implies blissfulness, pure joy. However, life has to be lived. Therefore, the me comes back. But now, this me that has come back has dipped into the awareness, has tasted the bliss of wholeness. So, its nature is not so solid as it appeared earlier. But still, the old patterns repeat. But what you will notice with time is that as you observe these patterns more and more, or I would use the word witness instead of observe, as the witnessing of the patterns will happen more and more, you will realize that you truly are not the patterns. You are simply the unaffected observer of what is happening. So earlier, because there was an anchor, an identification that categorized things into good and bad, the way they should be and the way they should not be, is not very solid now. So you see, you are simply seeing what is happening, and the seeing is impersonal. And whatever change is required for this mind body organism, that is an appearance in consciousness, is brought about through that consciousness only. And you have nothing to do with it. So, what I'm trying to say is that the patterns may not change, but you will become more accepting towards who you really are, or who the mind body organism really is, the way it's conditioned, and the way it interacts and behaves in the world. Your map for navigation remains the same before or after awakening. If you are someone who likes reading or who likes to play a particular game, that may continue even after the awakening, or it may drop. But there is no judgment towards it. And there is no losing spiritual awakening because, or glimpse, because there was nothing gained in the first place. The glimpse was a realization of the absence of me. It was a realization that wholeness is all there is. So the one that comes up with concern that I may go back to who I was and I didn't like who I was is just a conceptual thought. This worry of becoming my former self, which earlier I had I had come to a conclusion is not something good, that should not be, is now accepted. I had patterns, I had behaviors that world may call unhealthy or undesirable, but in my concept now, it was what was happening and it is what still happens. Now, from what I've seen, many of these unhealthy behaviors do come to an end as this realization deepens, as the observation of the patterns happen without judgment, without correction, without modification, without analysis. Because you see, this correction, the idea to make oneself better, spiritually more evolved, these are just conceptualizations of the mind. And that mind has already been cracked. You know? So, who is the one analyzing? Who is the one worrying about anything? So, spiritual awakening cannot be lost because spiritual awakening was never gained. It is something that happened. And what I say is it happens through grace of God. But it necessarily does not make your life blissful. In fact, life after awakening is quite painful because mind gets to see its unreality in the form of a knowing, not conceptualizing. So the mind which conceptualizes, analyzes is now gone. And so goes all the pain, all the suffering associated with that conceptualization. Which means I was like this before and I did not like it. And I'm still continuing to be like that even after awakening happened. And I still don't like it. I want something to change because of awakening. But now, you see, this thought is not very solid. So at some point, there is this realization that even if I continue to behave as I was behaving earlier, that probably is my nature. And that is a pattern that I personally do not need to put any effort to change it, but allow the simple witnessing of it. And if it is in my destiny to have that pattern changed, it will change. But I'm not trying to become a certain way because my whole idea of becoming a certain way is to basically prove that I have improved as a result of awakening, as a result of something special happening to me. You see, it is all about me. This me which is now cracked is trying to figure out a way to become something other than what it is. So it thinks that it is going back to something that is undesirable. But that is not the case. And why does this happen? This happens because we have trained the mind in that way all our lives. We have been told that we have to become better, we have to become worthy. All those ideas are running in our mind. And we think that once we have a clean image, as we've always imagined, that is when the society, the world will accept me. But you see, there is no solidness to this thought anymore. And I pretty much feel okay with myself as being flawed in the eyes of others. But I know who I am. Sometimes I'm compassionate, empathetic. Other times I'm none of those things. These are all functions which are based on mind, and mind continuously changes. And awakening is the acceptance of this changing nature of the mind, while knowing at the same time that I am not the mind, I am not the body that I associate myself with. I am simply the awareness. Awareness that was not born, that does not die. Awareness that can never be lost. So, whatever movement the mind produces, I am not that. I am the pure stillness. I am the essence that is here and now, that does not need modification, that does not need analysis, that does not need to be fixed. And another thing that happens is that the mind starts reverting on itself. So when something happens, instead of externalizing and putting the blame, shame, guilt, malice onto other people or situations or events, the mind reverts on itself as to who is this me that is afraid of change? Who is this me that is scared? Who is this me that is saying that other is responsible for my happiness? Who is this me that claims I was awakened and that now I have lost awakening? So you see, self-inquiry happens as a result of spiritual awakening. And this self-inquiry leads to a place of completeness, wholeness. That is our true nature.